Hi, I'm Beth from Restyled Pieces Boutique. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be working on this crusty china cabinet, and it was so dirty. It's probably the dirtiest piece I've ever worked on. I had to clean it a couple of times and rinse it, and it turned out to be clean, and then it had broken veneer on the top that I had to remove, and just a lot of things that needed to be done to it before I could get it up to being functional and beautiful. So if you want to see this makeover, stay tuned. So when I say dirty, I mean dirty. This piece was nasty. It had veneer coming off the top of it. It needed a lot. So I just don't understand sometimes how these pieces get in such bad shape. I can't imagine. It's such a gorgeous piece. So started right out vacuuming all the dirt and dust that I could get up before I started cleaning it with my cleaner. So I have a shop vac that I use just for this. I have a different shop vac that I use when I sand. It's a dust extractor. But look at that. Just layers of crud. And I was so glad to finally get to sweep some of this off. In order to get to all the little cracks and crevices, I wanted to go ahead and take off this fretwork and the glass. This piece was a little bit easier. It just had 4 long pieces and they weren't in really well, so it was pretty easy to take that, pop that out, and just get that all cleaned up. I really like the hardware and I plan on keeping it. But I'm going to pop that off too so I can clean this drawer very well. Look at all the crud underneath that. And so I just keep my pieces in a little container and all my screws all together so I know where they are. So I'm using Pure Power by Farmhouse paint. It's a cleaner, degreaser, it gets wax off. It does a really good job of cleaning your pieces. And then it was time for lots of fun. It was time to chip off all this old peeling veneer and get it down to wood that I could sand and do something with. So it was really hard and difficult to get pieces of it up. So I used my wet towel with an iron. You just put the iron on there for a while, let it sit for a while. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times. And then after that, you just I took my painting tool and painter's tool, and I just got under that edges of that veneer and got it up. You can see there it wasn't coming up very well, so I had to do it again. The outside piece was just fine, so I wasn't worried about that. There were 2 different sections of veneer, but you can see all of the veneer that I chipped off the top of this piece. So it's time to fill all those cracks and crevices and holes in the top. So I'm using Bondo wood filler. It's a 2-part putty system. You have the first part, the gooey part, I call it. That's a technical term. And then the hardener that you squeeze in there, mix it up to one color, and then you spread it on your piece. It dries to a rock hard finish, and then I can sand that smooth, and this top will look 100% better. So this is a tall piece anyway, 65 inches tall, and then I put it on my platform with my rollers, and so I have to use a little step ladder to get up there to work on it. so I get my stepper routine in. So I'm just putting some more putty. It dries very quickly, so you have to work quickly. So I'm using 2 little piles of it, and I just mix the first one up, use it, and then when it dries out and gets hard, I use my second pile of Bondo, put the hardener in it, and then I can work with that piece. So there you can see there was a lot to fill. Once I sand this, like I said, it's going to be all smooth and ready for paint. While I've taken the shelves out and they were in pretty bad shape, there was no way I could just refresh them with a wood conditioner. So I'm sanding them to bare wood, and then I'm going to be staining them. There are 2 shelves in there. I'm using my Festool sander, and you can see it's doing very good work on this piece. All of the products I use in this video are linked in the description below. So I go through a progression of sandpaper. I use my 80 grit to get down to bare wood. I sweep off all that dust because I don't want that on there when I go to my next sandpaper, which is my 120 grit. And then I finish up with my 180 grit. And now I'm using Fusion Stain and Finishing Oil. It's a product that has stain and finishing oil. It's resin, so it dries very hard, so you do not need a top coat. So I'm staining these in the new color Walnut from that product, and I'm just putting that on my piece, wiping it down, and it looks beautiful. And I just let it dry overnight, and then it's finished. And here I'm scuff sanding my piece, getting out some of those imperfections, sanding where I had to fix some veneer, and just roughing up my surface so that I can get it ready for paint. Actually, the surface was pretty roughed up already, so I was just getting out some imperfections and making sure I had a nice, even surface for my paint. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I started to sand the legs down to bare wood because the finish was such bad condition, but I wasn't able to do that. I started it and it was just too tough, so I'm using Clean Strip Premium Stripper, some brushes to put it on, some steel or wire brushes to clean it off. So you can see there at the top of the leg where I'd started to sand and it was just taking forever and it wasn't coming off. So I needed that old crusty finish to be gone. And I know this will do the trick. So I'm using my chemical resistant gloves. Always use those. I see people stripping with this product and not using gloves, and I just, shudder because this is very caustic. So wear your chemical gloves, wear pants, your respirator, my goggles, all those things to prevent any problems for my lungs and my body. So once I get that spread on liberally to both legs, I keep an eye on it for 15 minutes. I kind of go back here and there and I put a little bit more of the stripper on if I see it drying out. Then after the 15 minutes, I'm using my brushes, different size brushes, wire brushes, and I'm brushing off all that old finish. It's just kind of flopping around all over the floor. And then I'm getting all that finish off, and then I will rinse it with water. And this is why I spread a big piece of plastic out on the floor, because I don't want all of that all over my floor. So you can see all that finish coming off, and then I take my rag and I dip it in water and I just rinse off that whole leg. Now, I got a little crazy with the water right here. I forgot to wring it out. So I wring it out, then I just wipe it down with water a couple of times, and then I let it dry. I'm also wiping off the rest of the frame underneath there because I splattered some of my stripper and my contents on those pieces. My next step is to tape off the inside of the cabinet because I'm not going to be painting inside. I'm going to keep that natural wood. So I'm using Scotch tape and plastic and some frog tape, and I just roll that down and tape over the edges. Sometimes I get it stuck where I don't want it, but I just pull it off gently, put it where it needs to be, and then I've got that protected when I paint. I actually was going to keep the drawer stained, so I did tape up where the drawer was, but then I changed my mind later. I've got it all taped up. Everything looks good. I'm going to flip it over to do some things. There were some rollers in the bottom. They had casters on it, so I put dowels in there and cut them off to fill those holes where the casters were. And then I'm just bondoing over that, and I will sand those down smooth. My legs are dry after they have been stripped, and I'm just going over it with my 3x4 ray electric sander with my sponges. There are sanding sponges that are very cushy, and it's easier to get in all those details, and I'm just sanding it as best that I can. I am going to be staining this with gel stain, those legs, so it looks pretty good, and I'm using my dark walnut gel stain and just staining those legs, and then I'm wiping those down. I'm using a sock. I put my hand in a glove, and then I put the sock over that so I don't get my hand all brown. And I'm just staining that and wiping that back. When you first put stain on, sometimes it looks a little flat when it dries. It doesn't have much dimension, but once you put the top coat on, it looks so much better. So here I'm just taking my oil stained rags and my gloves and everything. I will eventually put my gloves in there in a coffee can with a bunch of water in it. Oil-based products can combust if you leave them laying on top of each other. And so that's why I do that. So here I'm using my new 3M PPS system with my spray gun. So I have an outer cup, an inner plastic cup, and then a lid that has a filter in it. I hook that up to my sprayer. I'm using Kills Restoration Primer. I'm just mixing that around, and sometimes I see if I think I need to thin it with a little bit of water, I'll put it in that cup. I decided I didn't need to. It was thin enough. So I just took my little plastic collapsible cup, put it in my outer cup for my sprayer, and the filter is right there in that lid, and it will just filter that as I work. Here you'll see me fiddling with this tube. It's so long, I don't know what to do with it. I wrapped it around the top a little bit, didn't like that. I'm just whatever. So if you have a good way to wrap this tube, just let me know. So I'm spraying with, like I said, Kills Restoration Primer. It is a water-based primer. It blocks bleed through. It gives you a nice, smooth, even surface for your paint to adhere to. And I feel like when I do this, my paint jobs come out so much better, and I feel like that paint is going to adhere better and it's going to last longer. So I'm a big proponent of priming. It might be an extra step, but I'm never sorry that I primed. That being said, it's not required that you use primer. The paint that I'm using today, Farmhouse Evolution paint, does not require primer, but it's just a personal preference of mine. As you can see, I also wrapped up my stained legs. I use aluminum foil and then a lot of frog tape. I just want to make sure that none of the paint gets through and gets on those front legs. And again, always wear your respirator. You can see when I'm painting that there's this cloud of dust that comes up with paint dust, and I don't want that in my lungs. So I make sure to protect myself. When I'm finished with my sprayer, I just unhook the tube that goes from the bottom to the spray gun, and then I open my flow all the way, pull the trigger, and it will release all that pressure that's inside. I've already done it a little bit, so you can't really tell, but it's releasing all that pressure, and then I can open my spray gun and clean it. And speaking of cleaning, I can just take this plastic piece out, pour whatever's left back into my can. I use distilled water if I did thin it, but I didn't thin it this time. And then I throw it away. So that makes it so much easier. All I have to clean is my gun. So here I'm using Farmhouse paint in Cosmic White. It is a gorgeous, bright, beautiful, pure white. And I don't normally paint white a lot, but I'm super excited how this is looking, and I hope it all blends together well and that this piece looks cohesive when I'm finished. This paint dries in 1 hour, it cures in 1 day, and it is very durable. It's acrylic resin paint, and it is so durable. I've never had any problems with anyone saying, oh, my paint scratched off. I always do the scratch test myself afterwards, and it's just so durable and strong. So after everything was dry, I didn't like the hinges as they were. Sometimes I'll paint the hinges and leave them when I know it's not rubbing at all, but this wasn't the case. So I'm taping those hinges off with my delicate Scotch tape. It's a lavender color. I'm doing a little bit of tiny sanding, then I'm using acetone to clean off any paint and primer or anything that's on that. And I want the same finish that's on my hardware. You can see that hardware down below. It's kind of an antique, original looking finish. So I want that same finish, so I'm going to have to try to come up with some way to make that same finish. So I've decided to use my spray paints in Rustic Mist and Burnished Amber and Black and Champagne Gold. And then I'm going to just mix those together and apply those in a way that it can mimic the finish that's on the hardware. It looks a little bit messy and weird right now, but once all the tape's taken off and everything's finished, it's going to be so cohesive, and I'm going to be so happy with that. Now that that's finished, I unwrapped my legs and I'm using Mid-Wax polyurethane. It's a wipe-on product. So I just wipe on the polyurethane on both of the legs. I wait for about 2.5 hours, and then I do another coat and another coat. So here I'm taking you back to the beginning. That dirty, filthy, old, broken piece turned into this beautiful swan. Oh my goodness, look at the grain and the legs and the dark and the light contrast. I just love it. Thank you so much for joining me this week. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, I would invite you to hit that subscribe button down there so you don't miss my next makeovers, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.